Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for yet another Chelsea preview live stream as Chelsea are to take on Sheffield United in the FA Cup quarter-final. And to distract you from my Rudolph red nose, just because I went skiing for one day, I'm joined by a very, very, very special guest today, by the legend himself, as I called him today, the celebrity himself, Mr. Matisse Armani. Bro, how are you?
Lateness is greatness back in the building. You already know what time it is. I'm back, and it's been good, bro. It's been a good couple of days. Obviously, we had the win, we had the draw, and then some few personal things that are going well. So yeah, I can't really ask for much more. I'm in a very good mood. Brilliant.
I mean, that's all we can hope for. Obviously, it's been a minute since we spoke to each other properly. So before we get into anything, I reckon Chelsea, Sheffield United. Why don't we just run me down quickly what you thought about the whole Atletico thing, what you thought about the draw? Really couldn't have gone any better. I mean, the game itself, the draw, then I don't know if you're as hyped as I am, but I definitely am very hyped with that draw. Like, I don't think it could have gone much better in our favour. But what did you make of it, obviously, when it happened on Friday?
I think it's the least we deserve. You know, we had the toughest draw you could possibly get in the round of 16 with Atletico Madrid. We dispatched of them from minute 1 in the away game to minute 90 in the home leg. And we played great football, and we deserve now to have a favourable tie. I think Chelsea have been mugged off quite a few times in the round of 16. The last times we went out, we've had Barcelona, we've had Bayern Munich. So Chelsea, no one can say Chelsea get easy draws or anything like that. That would be Manchester City, that bribe UEFA. We don't do that around here. You know, we get shagged most of the time. So I'm quite happy to see Porto. Everybody knows the correlation with 2012, Portuguese team in the quarterfinal, potential Spanish in the semis. I think, obviously, Porto was a great tie, but I think the fact that the whole draw is in our favour, the fact that the semi-finals went our way as well, really does give the fan base something to go with in terms of a momentum of potentially if we can just, you know, behave ourselves, don't be complacent, don't be silly, and really, you know, zone in on this Champions League run and focus and play to our maximum, and our strikers can start lapping up their chances, there's no reason why we can't go all the way. So I think with that clear road and pathway, the whole fan base is quite excited, but it's up to Chelsea to take care of business, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's kind of almost a funny coincidence that after this draw, after it happened to go almost so similarly to how obviously it went in 2012 with the types of opponents and everything, that now we're in the, you know, FA Cup quarter-final. We're kind of like, that's why I titled it, could we actually repeat what happened in 2012? Obviously, we sacked the manager. I'm not sure whether this is actually true, but I read it on Twitter somewhere after the same amount of Premier League games that we sacked Villas-Boas is when we sacked Frank Lampard. And, you know, obviously, Dubois has this whole thread, the biggest thread I've seen in my life. Exactly. Of similarities. Exactly. Like, it's a madness. Like, before we go into any details, could we actually repeat it? Or is that just getting ahead of us?
I mean, if you're going off Juju and you're going off Dubois' thread, which I've got to talk to him about soon, then there's every reason why we could. Because you look at the manager, you know, new manager coming in. We were linked with the initials EH, Eden Hazard, now it's Erling Haaland. There's so many little things that are just exactly the same. Now, if I'm being serious, it was all dependent on the draw. Because that was, for me, you know, if we had Bayern Munich, PSG, or Man City in our way, I would have said our chances would have dropped. But because we don't have any of those teams on our side of the draw, I 100% believe we can get to the final. And then in the final, anything can happen. So, of course, we can win it. Because that draw, you know, we're the most informed team on that side of the draw. Porto are second in Portugal in 10 points off Sporting Lisbon. So they're not having a great season by their standards of trying to win the Portuguese league. Yes, they knocked out Juventus, but we know Juventus are limping with Pirlo in charge. We know they're nowhere near as good as they are this season. There's Europa League Italian teams that are ahead of them in Serie A. You've got a situation where Liverpool, we just played them. We just beat them. We know what they're about. I think Liverpool are a dark horse potentially in our side just because they don't have anything to play for. I don't think they're going to make Champions League football via the Premier League, so they're probably going to be able to throw their eggs in one basket, and they are set up to be a tournament team with the amount of issues they've had this season. And Real Madrid have obviously, they're glossed in history with this competition as well, but we haven't played them since, what, 1998 or something. But those two are obviously, you know, when it comes to this competition, they're cup kings in terms of winning it the most times. But Chelsea, you know, we showed against Atletico Madrid that we can fight against adversity. We've shown that we have a mentality. Players that I didn't know had the bottle, had the balls to really show themselves up in high pressure situations. They've proved that they have leadership qualities and that they have a bit of shithousery in them. The likes of Rudiger, you know, the likes of even Zuma stepping in for Christensen. big worries before the game. We had a lot of players missing. Atletico Madrid had a fully strength team to pick from, and we dispatched of them comfortably. So with this defense and the building blocks that are in place, the counter pressing, the way that we build out from the back, the way that we defend, and we look like we're keeping a clean sheet against anybody. If that attack, and it's the if that attack can get firing, then of course we can win it. But that attack has to improve. They need to fire. They need to, even a 2 or 3 of them, if they can get on form, we have every chance. But we need those attackers to start being ruthless, because they're still not quite there yet. We haven't scored more than 2 goals in a game under Tuchel. So that's one thing we need to sort out. You're not going to get as many chances potentially in the latter stage of the Champions League, especially in the final. We all remember that final against Munich. We had to be ruthless in the final third. Drogba, 88th minute, he had to put that in. And that's the type of player we're going to need. Potentially maybe Giroud does a European thing with that. So I can see it. Giroud and Drogba the same age, 34 years old. It's all
they
swinging
both
our way.
speak French.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So it's all going in our direction. So I think the fact that we have Thiago Silva and Thomas Tuchel that made the Champions League final last year, that will help us big time. Just even if Thiago is not playing all the time, he's going to be a massive influence off the sidelines as well. So that's huge.
100%. It's weird because I seem to be the only person that wouldn't actually be that worried if we would have faced PSG. I don't know. And when I watched that second leg against Barcelona, to me, they're all just give the ball to Mbappe and inshallah. Like, that's all they do. They just hope that Mbappe does something. Obviously, if Neymar's back, it's a slightly different story. But will Neymar be back? The man's injured more than bloody Eden Hazard is. Like, it's a bit mad. I don't know. I don't rate PSG that highly. I know they made it to the Champions League. I'm just going to give Tuchel most of the credit for that. I'm just going to make it as simple. But exactly like you said, and I guess it's probably a similar situation in the FA Cup as well. There is really only Man City where I'd be slightly worried. Can we beat these guys? Everybody else, I'm at least confident that we stand a very good chance. And then you get to a final and you never know what can happen. You never know what can happen, what the league situation is. But then obviously City will probably have it wrapped up by then. So chances are, obviously the FA Cup final is after the league finishes anyway. But even if we were to play them, say, in the semi-finals, were we to go through tomorrow, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. And there's so many similarities. It's almost crazy. Let's ignore the fact that there's also a fair few similarities for Liverpool, final in Istanbul and whatever. Let's just focus on our similarities and let's just get that done. I spoke to a Liverpool friend of mine and he's like, they had their fun 2 years ago. It's our turn now. They've already done that. They don't need to go again. They absolutely don't need to go again. But to focus a little bit more on tomorrow's game. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this right now, big up to yourself, big up to Jesters, by the way, big up to everyone else in the chat. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're very, very close to 9,000 subscribers. Don't know how many exactly we're away, but make sure you subscribe. That'd be sick if we could hit that. We're on the road to 10K. So let's make that happen as soon as possible. And of course, check out Matisse's channel, Mar's channel. Do people actually, do your friends call you Mar or Matisse?
No,
they all call me Matisse. Mar is just the online thing.
The MAH thing is just to shorten it. I thought to myself, if I just put that as that's my initials. So I thought if I just made it based on that, it's just easier for people to search, easier to put in the title, less characters, and it just simplifies everything. So, and if I didn't want people to, if I had if I had a job in the real world, banking or anything, then they wouldn't be able to put the two names together. So it gives me that little bit of hidden, I don't know, mystery about it. But yeah, that's really what it is, to be honest. I've had that nickname for years.
Especially they're putting it in the title thing, it's big.
Yeah, I know it's helpful. So I'm just trying to make it easier. And I've had that nickname for probably nearly 10 years when it comes to online content. So I just thought to myself, it's just easier to stick with it.
Xbox Live, yeah.
Exactly.
There you go. I've seen some reader, sorry if I butchered your name, and also sorry if I didn't read your comment out earlier. Him saying he thinks Porto is actually a very tough draw. You can see it both ways. Sure, they're a defensive team. Sure, they beat Porto. Bloody Burnley are a defensive team. Bloody Atletico Madrid are a defensive team. We still beat them. That doesn't, just because we're hyped about getting Porto, doesn't mean they're a bad team. They're still probably the easiest of the bunch. You can make a case that maybe Dortmund are up there as well. They have Haaland, they have Sancho, sure. But I mean, they're losing to bloody Cologne right now in the Bundesliga. Yeah. Yes, I know we got a draw against Leeds and Southampton as well. It doesn't always work like for like, sure. But still, it's still bloody better than playing Man City or Bayern Munich right now. Hence why I'm going to be gassed and I'm not going to let anybody stop me from being gassed, if that makes sense.
We're in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. There's no such thing as an easy draw. However, if you could, every year, if you're in the quarterfinal of the Champions League, you bite your hand off for Porto. It's as simple as that. They're not in a league that's in the top 5 European leagues. So that 2 defeats, of course, 100%, 2 defeats is fantastic. But we just played against a team in La Liga with barely any defeats before we played them as well that were top. So, when it comes to Porto, we give them their respect. They're going to have threats. Of course, they're going to be, good at set pieces or good defensively. Every team's going to have their strengths, but I still would expect and back Chelsea to beat them with the quality that we have. And if you're, I can't call. There's no way I'm calling Porto a bad draw. When you had Bayern Munich, you had the option of Man City, PSG. No way. You're not going to be able to convince me that Porto is a bad draw. Porto's one of the best draws you could have got. That maybe Real Madrid as well, maybe Liverpool. But yeah, we're on the right side of the draw, so there's not going to be any complaining from me on that one.
100%, 100%. I guess we should probably talk about the actually upcoming game, FA Cup quarterfinals. It's weird because it doesn't feel like we're in the latter stages here, but we are. Like we're 3 wins away from winning the bloody trophy. Like we're pretty much there, if that makes sense. And we got a somewhat favourable draw in the quarterfinal as well. Like let's look at ourselves. I'm pretty sure Sheffield United are bottom of the Premier League. And I know they just got rid of Chris Wilder, whether it was by mutual consent or whatever it was. And they got absolutely battered by Leicester in their first game without Chris Wilder. Mind you, they had a week since then. They might have sorted themselves out a little bit rather than the 48 hours or whatever it was since Chris Wilder left before, obviously, the Leicester game. So who knows how that goes. But you mentioned it earlier. We haven't scored more than 2 goals in any single game under Thomas Tuchel. And that is certainly something that we need to, put right at some point. And as much as I don't want to underestimate them by any means, Sheffield United are no joke. And we shouldn't underestimate them. And I bloody hope the team don't. And the important thing is, let's avoid a Champions League hangover from being gassed about the draw, being gassed about beating Atletico. We don't want that. That's always the game after a big win is almost more difficult than the big win itself. That's just how football goes. But it is a real chance to not only go through to the semi-finals, it's also a big chance to actually get a few goals, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I want this FA Cup. And I'm sure Tuchel will be drumming it into these players that they need to keep up their levels. If anything, the Champions League draw and the win should motivate them further to win this match because he can use it against them. If you don't perform in the FA Cup, if you don't perform in the Premier League, don't expect to be in that starting 11 come Porto. That's how it should be. You use that to your advantage, not your disadvantage. For me, when it comes to this game, yes, it's Sheffield United. Yes, that's all they've got to play for because they're basically relegated. Yes, they might have a new caretaker manager bounce or whatever's going on there. And, I remember when Portsmouth won the FA Cup and they still got relegated in the same season. So not to completely disrespect them. However, this is Chelsea and Chelsea should be going into this game at Stamford Bridge and they should be cleaning up. They really should be. If they're serious about winning a trophy this season, regardless of the Champions League draw, you don't just put all your hat on the Champions League. You never do. It's a knockout competition. It's not easy. The FA Cup is the same thing. I think, in terms of the teams that are left, like you said, only Man City is the only team that I would, be a little bit wary of. Everybody else, we should be able to go up against and fancy ourselves to win. So it is an opportunity to stat pad, but I've said that a few times and we haven't done it. So it's funny because at the same time, as much as I want to see the likes of Werner, Kai Havertz, Ziyech actually stat pad in this game before the international break and get their confidence up, it probably is a good opportunity to rotate, bring in the likes of Giroud, who hasn't got too many minutes recently. Manager's been saying that in his press conference. Pulisic got the assist against Atletico, might want to start and show what he can do. Mason Mount, Jorginho come back into the team potentially, Billy Gilmore. So there's a lot of opportunity to utilise a big squad. And I've said it before, we're going to need the whole squad. If we're going to do anything this season of substantial outside just finishing the top 4, I'm talking about winning cups or even getting to finals of cups, we're going to need the whole team. So that means keeping everybody on side, which Tuchel's doing a great job at. And keeping them interested. So it's a good opportunity to bring in some fringe players. This is probably the last opportunity we're actually going to get to bring in some of these fringe players. And if I'm talking about the likes of Kepa, Emerson, players like that, because if I'm being real, this is the last fixture, without disrespecting Sheffield United, that is like a low, not even low pressure, but just a very clear winnable game. Of course, the Premier League games are up against Brighton and West Brom are winnable, but that's the Premier League. You have to play your strongest team at all times because you never know what's going to happen, and we need to make top 4. So this is the last kind of opportunity for players to that are right on the peripheral and right on the fringe to show themselves. Because after this, it's Premier League, semi-final of FA Cup, hopefully, and Champions League. There's no more room for error. Even in individual performances, everybody's going to have to be on point. So I'm looking forward to the game. I hope for a comfortable win and some goals. Yeah, 100%.
That'd be good. I mean, yeah, the only other chance I really see is maybe last Premier League game of the season against Aston Villa, if top four is tied up by then, which of course it could be by the last day. But then how much do even those fringe players care for that last Premier League game when they know everything's done and that's why we're playing? It's a big difference to getting a chance in a FA Cup quarter-final. But you make a good point. It's an interesting question because, yes, stat padding would be good. Keeping momentum going would be good too. But we need some of these other players to get going. And it's weird to have a game like this just before an international break. It's kind of a weird spot. Obviously, it is the first international break of 2021 just after this now. A couple of players will stick around because of, lockdown and quarantining rules all over the world, but most of them will still be going out. And it's weird. I can't really remember whether this has happened before that you had this game where you'd like to rotate literally the last game before an international break. It's kind of weird because usually chuck them in, hope they don't play in the international break, hope they don't get injured and they come back kind of fresh, if things go to plan. And now we're in a situation where you could do that, but then, like you said, you should probably rotate a little bit. And I guess, before we go into more detail about how we'd like to see the game go or whatever, should probably discuss the team. Before we get into predicted 11, I want to kind of discuss what we'd like to see ourselves. And the first one is, do we want Kepa to start? I personally think I would, because he's done well in the last few months whenever he has gotten the chance. Yeah. And, we've said it many times, the more games, the more clean sheets he gets, the more likely we are to be able to get rid of him in the summer. Whether it's on a permanent loan, that doesn't make any sense. Whether it's a loan or a permanent move, but at least a loan where the team takes up most of their, most of his wages. Yeah. So I reckon Kepa probably yes, but what do you think? Kepa, yeah?
Yeah, I'll go with Kepa. I think there's not going to be many more opportunities this season where he can actually play, because, again, like I said, after this game, it's very, very competitive in terms of the fixtures and the magnitude of the fixtures as well. Now, potentially, he might get another chance in the Premier League against a Brighton or West Brom if Marina knocks on Tuchel's door and says, listen, put him in. Do you know what I mean? Like he had to in that game after the Barnsley one. But I think it's unlikely, and I think it was Everton he started, isn't it, or something like that after the Barnsley game. But
Newcastle,
not Everton. Yeah, so it's unlikely though. So I think this is the last potential opportunity for him to play this season, unless we wrap up top four early, like you said. So I'd play him. I think the way that this team defend, no matter who comes into the back three as well, there's not many shots being conceded on target. So Kepa is very well protected in this system. So for him to have a mistake in this game would be quite unlikely, in my opinion, with the way that Tuchel set up the team. The only thing that people might go on about is the set pieces, the physicality of Sheffield United. But I would just have to hope and pray that that is something that he sorts out during the game, because in open play, this team don't concede a lot of shots on target. They're very well organised. Like I said earlier, the counter press is very strong. No matter whether it's Jorginho, Kovacic, Kante in that midfield, the counter press is very good, especially if Mason Mount comes back into this team as well. The counter press is going to be very strong. So I expect Chelsea to have a lot of possession, control the game, and defend with the ball. It's what Pep does. It's what Tuchel's been speaking about as well. And it's something that is very important for this team, to defend with the ball. When you have the ball, the opposition cannot score. It's impossible. So I think they'll have a lot of possession. And for that reason, I don't think Kepa's going to be a massive risk in this game. Just need him to really do the basics right, be good on the ball as well. Ball playing aspects, Mendy's been very strong. I know he's given people some scares at times, but there's no big errors leading to goals from him this season that I can think of. And on the ball, he's been very good with it. He's continued to stick to the principles, the instructions. The whole back three against Atletico Madrid were very strong. They kept the ball, they evaded the press, and that's what I expect them to do against Sheffield United. So I'd start Kepa, and I think potentially it might even be the last time we see him, so you may as well put him in.
Exactly, yeah, that's it. And, like Leicester said here, is he the FA Cup goalkeeper? Because it will be interesting, say, hoping we progress tomorrow, whoever we face in the semi-finals, there is a chance, by the way, it could be Southampton, which would be, again, a somewhat favourable draw, by the way. As much as, obviously, we drew against them when we last played them in the Premier League, they're still easier than Man City, right? it will be interesting to then see does Kepa play or not. That will be
I personally don't believe in that stuff. I think if you get to
Okay.
Wembley, play your strongest team. I'm not unless the cup goalkeeper is very close in quality to the senior goalkeeper. So, for instance, Martinez and Leno at Arsenal. Martinez arguably might even be the better goalkeeper from what we've seen this season at Aston Villa.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand a goalkeeper being a cup goalkeeper and a senior goalkeeper. Even Begovic, when we had him under Courtois, Begovic was a very solid goalkeeper. I would have been happy or okay for him to be the cup goalkeeper. But the drop in quality from Mendy to Kepa is so large that as soon as we get to Wembley, as far as I'm concerned, you're 2 games away from winning the trophy. You need to play your strongest team. So I wouldn't be going with a cup goalkeeper, even if it's against Southampton. Wembley's just a different situation. The pressure's on, the pitch feels bigger, the occasion is massive, the fireworks start. That's when you should be taking it extremely seriously.
Exactly, and I'm pretty sure last time Kepa played at Wembley, I know he probably played against Spurs last season, didn't he? I know that was already their new stadium. To me, in my head, it still looks like Wembley. My bad. But the last time he probably played at Wembley is when he refused to be subbed off, wasn't it?
Potentially. I mean, maybe last season, actually. No?
I think Caballero played both.
The Arsenal game? Who would have played that?
I'm pretty sure Caballero played that. And I just can't remember if Caballero played against United as well.
Okay, yeah. Well, potentially he might have, yeah, because I remember Kepa wasn't keeping the shirt in terms of that quite consistently. So, yeah, maybe it would be the first time, but I would go with Mendy in the semi-final and the final because the quality gap is clear. Do you know what I mean? It is very clear.
100%, that's for sure. I guess the next question is, and maybe it's a no-say question almost, but do we stick to the back 3? Is this a game where we're like play with the back 4 a little bit just in case, or to make the team more used to it for if we need to switch to it in Premier League games, or just stick with what we've been good with?
Nah, don't change what's not broken. For me, back 3 is playing very well. Back 3, everyone keeps saying, is the back 3 the reason why we're not attacking so well? Is it stifling us? Is it stopping us from creating chances? Absolutely not, in my opinion. It all depends on how you play. And everybody, we've heard Tuchel say it, we've heard Brendan Rodgers say it. It's not the formation that dictates the way that you play. It's the principles and the the foundations of what you believe in that control that. You can play a 4-3-3 and look incredibly boring and defensive and still not play well. So it doesn't really matter what formation for me. This formation is working. I wouldn't change it. We're going to be rotating the players anyway. If you change the formation as well, you're potentially just doing too much. And then you're causing upheaval. If you have to change it mid-game and you play one of the wing backs that can operate as a winger, you can change it mid-game if you have to, which is what we did against Barnsley. But I would still start with the 3 at the back and just keep it like that because there's no need to change it. We're playing extremely well in that formation, and I wouldn't even change it next season either. If we continue to play like this with the way that we're defending, I'd continue with the back 3 next season because the defenders right now suit it. The youth coming through in Mark Gahey, Ampadu and others suit it as well. And it kind of stops us, if this defense keep defending like this until the end of the season, it stops us from having to run around for a centre back in the summer. If they're all playing like this, why would you bother purchase? You don't need to. You can focus on the other positions which need strengthening, like a striker or a midfielder, or wing back potentially. So I would keep it like this and see if there's any longevity in it.
I see where you're coming from with that. My counter argument to doing it long term in terms of also next season, I agree with it for this season, would be that from experience, whenever Chelsea have started playing 3 at the back consistently for too long, other teams have just found out how to deal with it. Whether that was Conte, first we won the league, at some point that just didn't click anymore, and we either had to grind out games or got just tactically beaten too consistently. I know that Tuchel is more inept and more adequate tactically than even Antonio Conte, as much as tactically I actually rate him quite highly. But still, I think the way I see Tuchel, and again, I could be completely wrong with this, I just see him in preferring a back 4, mostly because I think if we want to keep playing a back 3, I think we need to not sign just one centre back, but maybe 2, because we can't play Aspie every single game like we have been doing. Like that won't work. And we need a proper right centre back, or do the same on the left. But we don't really have it on the left like we have Aspie on the right. Do you know what I mean?
That's where Mark Gahey would come in for me in terms of being the secondary option behind a Rudiger. I just think with a team that's conceded 2 goals in 13 games and potentially that could continue that kind of record, you'd find it very difficult to convince anyone that, like, in terms of Chelsea board, Tuchel, he'd find it very hard to convince that board that you need to sell those defenders and bring in new ones for a back three. I was, more than on board with bringing in a left-footed centre-back, more than on board with bringing in characters into that back three as well for leadership. But if Rudiger keeps playing like this, then you can't really sell him. You can't really take him out of the team. If they continue, hypothetically, if this team was to go on to win an FA Cup, get to the Champions League final, and either or win it or even lose in the final and reach top 4, it would be very difficult to say that back line needs replacing. So it's one of those ones where kind of have to play it by ear at this point. I think in terms of signing players, there's a certain amount of chemistry that's been put together now in this defense, and that's not easily bought into as well. And there's not a great market for centre backs out there as well, which is another thing. I don't think the market is great for centre backs at the moment in terms of realistically who you can bring in that's definitely going to elevate this team. There's a few options, but there's not that many. And the reason why I think the back three, I mean, we could say the 4-3-3 could get found out. Any formation can get found out if the manager's not tactically flexible. But I think with Tuchel, not only is he playing this formation in a non-negative way, which Conte was, he's playing in a progressive attacking way where we have the ball. He also uses one of the wing backs as potential wingers. So you can change shape during the game. You can go to a back 4 during the game. You don't even have to change formation with a substitution. If he continues to use a Hudson-Odoi at right wing back, or if he brings in a left wing back, potentially who's more of a winger, potentially Gueno at Dortmund, I think he was linked with one of those boys. If he does something like that, then you can change formation quite quickly in this system. So I'm interested to see how it goes, because I'm less bogged down on what formation we play and just more what suits the players. And I think especially this midfield does suit double 6 and being protected with a 3. Jorginho, not a natural holding midfielder. Kovacic, not a natural holding midfielder. Kante, not a natural holding midfielder. To play a 3, you'd have to make quite a few signings in that midfield for it to work. We've seen that already, the imbalance already. So for me, I'm quite intrigued. I'm interested to see if this can stay.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying with that. For me, like I said, it's just mostly the Aspie position, because I don't see it as simple as, say, putting Christensen there. Christensen is a different type of player to what Aspie is, because Aspie is kind of a right back playing right centre back, right? And I think we kind of need to just buy a really defensive fullback to play in that role, to be so progressive with it. Because I think if we stuck 3 proper centre backs in there, I don't think it's as progressive as if you have someone like Aspie there. I know Aspie at times struggles with the passing anyway, but still, he is still as hard a right back. And I still think that changes it drastically. I mean, so much so that against Leeds, a whole debate occurred when we were playing 4 at the back or 3 at the back. That's how kind of close between right centre back and right back he was, if that makes sense. But I definitely see where you're coming from. Obviously, the summer will dictate a lot of it. Which players leave? Does a Jorginho leave? Does he not? If he does, who do we bring in instead of him, for example? Plus,
just to add to that as well, I think Ampadu's obviously, we don't know if he's of the level, but we know he's a good ball-playing centre-back who's played in all 3 positions. He's played in the middle, he's played on the right, he's played on the left, and he's been pretty good in glimpses. We know Mark Gahey is very good at playing out from the back. At Swansea, he's had a great season. He could probably play on that left-hand side. That right-hand side that you're talking about, I think suits Reece James. I really do. I've said it before. I think he is the hybrid between a right back and, your right-sided centre-back there. Because right wing back, I don't think you get just as high, in terms of 1v1, going at a defender, sometimes doesn't always make that run that you need to make, still learning the game there. And he probably could be a very good right wing back, but I think right-sided centre-back suits him perfectly. Played centre-back in the academy. Physically, he's up to it as well. We've seen his physicality. He's played right back, so he's going to have no problem going into the channels. And on the ball, he's very good. We saw at Wigan him playing midfield. We've seen many fans suggest that he could move into midfield when we was playing a 4-3-3. We was playing a double pivot earlier in the season with the 4-2-3-1. People were saying, could he potentially go into midfield? He's played in midfield before, very good on the ball. And I think he can play on that right-hand side where Aspie plays, step into midfield, cross from that position that Aspie did under Conte, and he'd be comfortable. So I think Reece James is already your ready-made player to play in that position. Like I said, physically, he's up to the task. So I would look at him, and then I would look at potentially if you want to purchase a right wing back, then that's where I would look. Someone like Tariq Lamptey. Obviously, it's hilarious the way things go, but he would have been perfect for that position.
Yeah,
he is someone. He is someone that really suits right wing back. If you're talking about someone that can go forward, he's got low sense of gravity. 1v1, he can be quite nippy as well, as we saw against Arsenal when he was playing for us. Good at crossing as well. And him and Reece James would have a bit of chemistry there as well. So Reece James would just be tucked in slightly. So I would 100% try Reece James in that right side centre back position before you look to purchase, because I think he could be the perfect answer.
Yeah, no, I've said this before in terms of, I think in terms of right now, I don't see Reece as an adequate like 1-for-1 replacement to Aspie, just because I don't think he has. It's all well and good having played centre back in the academy. Academy is different. Like we've seen so many players being superstars in the Chelsea academy, and then not even make it to being a Premier League footballer. You know what I mean? Like there's different levels. I've 100% agreed that he can be that, but I wouldn't like say in a Champions League final. I would definitely rather play Aspie there this season.
Yeah, you play. But I also don't think Aspie's going anywhere anytime soon. Maybe Aspie needs to be rotated in the future years to come, and he needs to, be looked after and managed more. And that's when you give Reece James his opportunities. But the timeline age-wise for Aspie to Reece James is perfect. So I wouldn't go purchasing someone and potentially, sometimes I feel like we're looking outside when we have inside solutions. How many times have we said, how many times have we seen these academy products come through and actually be better than some of the flashy new signings that we laud about and we go over the top about?
For sure.
I think in terms of out there on the market, there isn't that many options that stand out to me that say, 100%, let's go and get him, and let's not go for a Reece James at right side centre back, who again, like I said, has the physicality, has the mentality, and has already shown that he can step up on big stages at right back already. He's probably more physical than Aspie in terms of his build.
Oh, for sure.
So he is, he's strong as hell. So there's not really any fundamental reason in his game as to why he wouldn't be able to play that position. Defensively, position-wise, of course, that's something he has to improve, but he's had great performances defensively at right back. Wilfred Zaha against Palace last year comes to mind. So we know he's capable of it. We always say he's more well-rounded than Trent in terms of going forward and going backwards. He's the more well-rounded of the two. So I think the position personally suits him to a T. I can't see any reason as to why he wouldn't play well there, especially when that position steps into midfield, which he's very comfortable doing. He's usually the inverted right back. I saw Pep talking about how he likes to tuck in his right backs and his left back. Both fullbacks, he likes to tuck them in to make it a numbers game in possession in the midfield. We've seen him do that with Cancelo. Couldn't quite do that potentially maybe with Kyle Walker at times. Reece James suits that kind of role to come inside. How many times we see Reece James in midfield, maybe potentially even lining up a long shot or just in midfield to switch the ball? 100% he can play that role, in my opinion. 100%.
Yeah, I think you make a fair point. I just feel in terms of the transfer market, like you touched on a couple of times, like centre backs, it's where the market is not particularly saturated. I mean, we struggle to even pick one, and that's finding a proper centre back rather than one for a back three. Don't tell. I'm not trying to say they're not proper centre backs in terms of a proper centre back for a back centre back two. And I just think we find it easier to find a suitable player in midfield to make the whole team switch to back four in terms of the transfer market. But again, the last thing I wanted to get to that before we talk about who we'd like to see against Sheffield United is whether we stick to a 3 or a 4 for next season. I'm almost not bothered, especially if the back three keeps working really well. But I'm very confident that Thomas Tuchel in pre-season will make sure that both, whichever way of back four, but also still the back three, are all valid options that we can all just go to whenever necessary. While right now we're stuck with this 3-4-3, 3-4-2-1, whatever you want to call it, because we don't really have time to work on much tactically. There's only ever 3 days between games and whatever. It's all about just recovery. So I think after preseason that will certainly improve in that aspect. But in terms of tomorrow, who would you like to see as the back three? Obviously, Christensen was out for the Atletico game due to illness. He seems to be back because he was pictured in training at least. So you'd probably say he starts. You'd say Aspie needs a rest. And last time Emerson started the game was against Barnsley as the left-sided centre-back. I'm not sure whether we should do that again, to be honest. As much as he scored a brilliant goal, more likely to play him left forward because he's got better finishing than all of our forwards at the moment.
Yeah.
But what would you do with the back three? Because like I said, Christensen probably has to start. But I'm not sure about where, and I'm not sure about the other two, to be honest.
Silva's obviously out because we're going to continue to give him his time off, which I think is the right decision. There's no need to bring him back for this game. Aspie, even though he's not in the Spain squad and he's going to get the rest anyway, I agree. I'd just take him out of the team anyway. I think he could do with a very long rest because I think when the international break's over, he's potentially going to play every single game. He's been huge for Tuchel. Tuchel's leaned on him so heavily in terms of the captaincy, leading from the front. And being a mainstay in this team at right side centre back. So I think as the season comes to a crunch, then he's going to play every game. So I'd play Reece James on the right side of centre back, test out what I've been saying here. I think I'd love to see it. I think the opposition suits it as well. They can be physical with the set pieces. They can be physical crossing the ball into the box, but we're going to have the most of the possession. And it'd be nice to see him step into midfield. He's going to get plenty of the ball. One thing against Atletico Madrid, when I saw the pass maps, is Zuma in the middle of the back three. Despite the good defensive display on the ball, he can be quite limited. It wasn't the same as having Christensen in the middle. Wasn't the same as having Thiago Silva in the middle. His passing was quite restricted. It wasn't very progressive, and most of his passes went out to Aspie. If you look at
although I will say this. Atletico were kind of the first team that actually pressed our central centre. 100%. All the other ones only pressed the wide ones. So I still agree. I mean, this is just simple fact that Christensen and Thiago Silva are significantly better at passing. But I think Zuma also looked a bit more limited because he was pressed, while the others usually aren't. But sorry, continue.
The only times we've really been pressed is Southampton, Barnsley, sparingly in the second half against Tottenham when they, for 10 minutes, wanted to try something. But most of the time we haven't, correct? And I think
guess United, first half, probably?
Maybe so, yeah. The glimpses for half fake presses, I would say, from some of these other teams, not really proper pressing or organized strategic pressing. But I would just say, even though Zuma kept that clean sheet, I don't really want to see him in the middle of the back three too often. I think that suits Christensen. So I'd play Christensen in there again. And I'd probably play Zuma on the left-hand side, give Rudiger a rest. And Emerson, for me, I think we need that height in the middle of the defense. I think Christensen, Zuma and Reece James gives you a solid foundation in terms of strength heading the ball. And I would prefer to have Emerson at left wing back instead of left-sided centre back, because I just feel like if Sheffield United are going to cause us problems, it's going to be set pieces. It's going to be with the cross. And I'm not confident in Emerson on an aerial standpoint. So I would go with, Reece James, Christensen, and Zuma as the back three.
Yeah, see, like I said, I'm not totally convinced by Reece at right centre back, even though you make very valid arguments for why it would work just fine. But then if you have Thiago out and you want to give Aspie a rest, and you might want to give Rudiger a rest too, you're kind of forced into it. Like, what else are you going to do? Who else are you going to play there unless you change to back four? So, fair enough, really. I don't even disagree, in all honesty. But I don't think Tuchel will do it. If we're going to talk about Liquid 11, who do you think Tuchel will play? Because do you think he should stick with Aspie? Because obviously there is an argument to be made. Reece played a fair few of the last few games and will probably play for England as well. But like you touched on, Aspie isn't with the Spain squad.
He'll probably play Aspie. Yeah, he would. He probably will. Which I have no problem with. Any lineup that Tuchel picks now, I'm on board with, because the guy is clearly getting the tune out of every player. And what's fantastic is now, much like at Liverpool, the system is more important than the individual in it. So I think everybody has their instructions. If they come into the team, they know what they have to do. And Tuchel's quickly becoming the most important person at Chelsea. And that's the key here, because so much of the time, there's always been an individual who's maybe been, able to override the manager in terms of talent or in terms of ability or in terms of accolades. But I think if Tuchel clearly shows that he is the most important person with his system and with his fundamental and his ideas, and he's not going to be swayed too much. And it's not about being stubborn, because we know he's very flexible with his formations and his approach. He can be quite pragmatic. But if he continues to get these wins, and very convincingly with the clean sheets, regardless of the opposition, and shows that he can adapt and he can keep these players in line in terms of, you play my way in any given game, we will have most of the time success. Then I won't really mind what team he picks, to be honest, because they all seem to be able to come in and do a job.
That is fair. But actually, now thinking about it, I think I've changed my mind, because Rudiger was rested against Everton, wasn't he? So I don't think Rudiger needs a rest as such. So I'd maybe go, I'm not sure where Tuchel will put him.
Is he in the German squad, though?
He is, yeah.
I think that
I see the argument, but again, Reece is also in England squad.
I think the Leeds game and the Atletico game was both mentally and physically draining. And I think, again, because this fixture is the last time you're potentially going to get to rest anyone until the end of the season, if we're going on all fronts, I would give Rudiger a rest personally, because I don't think he's going to get another opportunity to get a rest, because the Premier League will be back, semi-finals of the FA Cup and the Champions League. You'd want Rudiger in this form. You'd want him playing all of those games. So there would be no other time where I'd have a lineup and I wouldn't really probably be putting Rudiger in it. So this is the last time that you could probably give him that rest. So I would probably take the chance.
I see that. I'm more thinking in terms of actually predict 11. I think he'll leave Aspie out, play Christensen right centre back, Zuma in the middle, Rudiger on the left, and give Aspie the rest rather than Rudiger. But hey, who the hell knows? I think at left wing back, it will definitely be Chilwell. He was left out of the last couple. Was it the last couple? No, he played against Leeds and was
played against Leeds. I would personally go with Emerson, but again, if Chilwell plays, I wouldn't mind. I just think Emerson's got barely any minutes. Not anything to do with the goal, because that was just one touch. It was a good finish, but it's got nothing to do with his overall contribution in terms of recent weeks or merit to start. But I just think because we're trying to keep a very big squad happy, I think Chilwell got his chance against Leeds. He wasn't great, in my opinion. He was okay, wasn't great. I think Emerson deserves an opportunity to play as a peripheral member, as a fringe player. So again, when is he going to get Chilwell's going to get his chances? I don't think Emerson will. That's why I would give Emerson the chance here.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I do still feel, though, that Chilwell, especially if we stick to the back three, Chilwell hasn't had a lot of games in his career as a left wing back. And the more he gets there, the more comfortable he will get in the position, the more closer he will get to his full potential in that role. While Alonso has obviously had, 150 odd games in that role, and he's obviously much more comfortable in it. Reece James needs any minute, not Reece James, Ben Chilwell needs any minute he can get to get as comfortable as he can. And he's not played a lot recently anyway. I see what you're saying with Emerson, and in terms of be nice to the guy and play him, I see it, but I'd probably go with Ben Chilwell myself. And on the other side, just Callum Hudson-Odoi. I was surprised that he was left out of the last two starting 11s in the first place, in particular to be left out of both of them. So in my opinion, he just has to start. And because of who I'd put in the front three, I guess he probably has to be a right wing back. Do you agree?
Yeah. No, 100%.
Fair. But ladies and gentlemen, by the way, we have more than 200 people watching, so big ups to yourselves for all of that. Make sure you subscribe. We're very close to 9,000 subscribers. You might have hit it already, but if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe right now. That'd be massively appreciated. And be sure to hit that like button. It's a dead grey. It's a dead grey thumb. No one likes it. Just click it. It turns blue. It looks much nicer. So just click that. That'd be brilliant. And if you want to, support the channel, do use the super chat function. We're kind of trying to not go too long with this stream, and we have a lot to talk about still. Hence why I've not really got up too many of the chats up, especially when you ask questions that have nothing to do with what we're currently talking about. It's quite difficult to squeeze it in. But if you really want to make sure to use the super chat function, but of course you don't have to. But yeah, we've fixed on the wing backs. I guess the midfield is the next position to talk about, because you'd presume Jorginho comes back in after he was, of course, suspended against Atletico Madrid. You'd presume that Billy Gilmour gets another chance. He played against Barnsley, was in the squad but an unused sub. Although I think some journalist, Simon Johnson maybe, tweeted he was about to come on, but then we scored the 2-0 and it just didn't happen because I also
heard Jorginho might have a knock, which might be why he's not in the Italian squad. I'd have to get that checked.
Is he not in the Italian squad?
I don't know if he is or not, but I heard he might have a knock. That was the first thing that I heard this morning, and then kind of went all dead on that. Let me see in terms of Jorginho if there's any news. But even still, I think I would lean towards Gilmour and Mateo Kovacic. Kovacic didn't play against Leeds, and I think he complements Gilmour a lot better than Jorginho would. I think Jorginho and Gilmour are too similar in terms of the way that they want to dictate the tempo, dictate having the most touches, and they're both controllers. And I don't think there's any need for two controllers in a game like this. You need someone who's going to want to break the lines with their running on the ball. And I just think Kovacic and Gilmour would be a nice pivot on the ball to try, especially in a game where we're going to have a lot of possession. I think Gilmour has to play for me because he never gets the opportunity to. I definitely trust him in a game like this. We speak about it being a big game, but Gilmour's played games before that mattered, and I think he's more than capable of controlling a game like this. And potentially, I wouldn't even be surprised if he ends up being one of the best players on the pitch in a game like this. That's usually how it tends to go for Gilmour in these cup games. So I'd play him next to Kovacic, and I think, yes, Jorginho didn't play against Atletico, but again, that's another player who's going to be playing a lot after the international break anyway. So I wouldn't really worry about that.
That is fair, and especially, I mean, you said he might not be, but if he is in Italy squad, he's a guaranteed starter for Italy 9 times out of 10. So he won't exactly get a rest there either. I mean, Jester said he thinks Jovic will start. It's a tough one because what we don't know is how highly Tuchel will value this game and how much Tuchel will want to make sure that we get the win. Because mind you, when we did play Sheffield United, as much as we got the win against them, it wasn't plain sailing. Like, they got a goal. Obviously, I know it was an own goal by Rudiger and a miscommunication between Rudiger and Mendy. But regardless, they were one of the 2 teams that actually managed to score against us, and it required a penalty to actually win the game. So it wasn't completely plain sailing. And as much as their last result was poor, obviously getting battered 5-0 by Leicester, there is an argument to be made that Tuchel maybe wants to make damn sure that we get this win. Obviously, Kovacic, there's always a chance he doesn't even start for Croatia. So you could make a case if Jorginho is at 100% to just go with Jovic. I agree. I'd probably tend to go for Billy, but it's also a case with Billy that he just hasn't played in so long. And even against Barnsley, when he did play, I didn't think he was very good. I didn't think any of the players other than maybe Tammy Abraham were very good in that game at all, to be honest. So do you see where I'm coming from with that? Like, maybe it's just quarterfinal. Maybe we undervalue it a little bit because it's Sheffield United.
I hear that, but I also think he's very big on rotation and giving everyone a chance as well. I think we've seen that. And I think for me, if it depends how much faith you have in Billy. I think that game against Barnsley, it wasn't the greatest game for playing a game of football in terms of the pitch and in terms of just knocking it about. It was quite it wasn't that type of fixture where you can really play your stuff. I think at Stamford Bridge, I think Gilmour and Mateo Kovacic would be fine. And again, I don't think, yes, obviously Jorginho is the better player, but I don't think Gilmour is going to detract too much from this team. He's slightly more mobile. He's going to be progressive in his passing. He's going to want to prove a point. That's the key here as well. About keeping people on their toes. I think Gilmour has got a lot to prove to Tuchel. I think Tuchel rates him, but Tuchel's definitely got him at the bottom of the pecking order. And I don't see Gilmour going out there and leaving anything on the pitch. He's going to go out there and really try and strut his stuff to even be a bit part of the rest of the season. So I think there's certain times where you give a player like Gilmour an opportunity to prove his point. And keep everybody in that first team on their toes, and I think this is the opportunity to do it, because I think Jorginho, we know what he's going to bring, we know the value of him, and again, this is bottom of the league Sheffield United. You know, we should be able, with a midfield of Mateo Kovacic and Gilmour, there shouldn't be any problems. Yeah,
I see that. In terms of what I personally think is most likely to start, if Jorginho is fit, I think you just go with Billy and Jorginho, because we've seen Billy play as an 8 as well on the flank. So Billy is not solely capable of playing like a controlling 6. I think if he's just told, be the progressor of the midfield too, then I think he's capable of doing that job. So I think that's what Tuchel will pick. I think it's what I'd pick as well, but I definitely see a point that Billy is supported by Kovacic more. But again, I think we're going to play a lot of Kovacic and Kante for the rest of the season if Kante stays fit the way and plays the way he did against Atletico. So I'd rather not overplay Kovacic just in case he plays 2 or 3 of the games for Croatia as well, because it's kind of been a thing with Kovacic as well. When he plays too much, it's not that he gets injured, but then his performances start dropping a little bit. Hence why it's been really good. And I talk that he's been rotated in and out of the team whenever the game suited it. But yeah, it's a tough one to predict. Like, it's a cup game. Like
the final case, I think the final case I would make is that I think those 3, Jorginho and Kante and Kova, will be rotated quite a lot, because the manager spoke about managing Kante before. and not letting him also burn out and get injured. So he's it's just as important to look after him as anybody else. And we are just one injury away from Gilmour being on that bench. So it would be, for me, it would be wise. The left back situation is different because you've got 3, but I think it would be wise to make sure Gilmour is on his toes, because you never know who's going to get injured, and then suddenly you've only got 2 deep lying midfielders in Kovacic or Jorginho, or Kante and Kovacic, or whatever trio mix and match you want to put. Gilmour would then be the next person in, and you don't want to have a situation where Gilmour's got no minutes under his belt and he potentially needs to play a role at the end of the season in these big fixtures. So I think it would be wise to give Gilmour some time on the pitch, especially with the lack of depth in that position, because there is just one injury and then you're back to square one. I don't think Tuchel's going to play Mason Mount that deep, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I guess we go to the front 3 then. And what a shout by Craven Moorhead. Front 3 of Tammy, Emerson, and Giroud. Tammy and Giroud together. I don't see it, mate. I don't see it. I'm pretty sure Mason Mount will play. And I think he should as well. Obviously, he scored last time out. We played against Sheffield United. I would like to start Christian Pulisic, also not start him at right wing back like he did against Leeds. I think he did good when he came on against Atletico. Obviously, provided a good assist with the long run. Seemed sharp. I was happy with that. So play him in his favoured role. Do that. So Mount and Pulisic as the sort of 10s behind the striker. And then up top, for me, obviously, we don't know 100% if Tammy's fit, because obviously he was back at training, but then kind of twisted his ankle again. And Tuchel in his press conference yesterday wasn't sure what fitness level Tammy will be at. If he is fit, I would start him for similar reasons you would like to start, say, Emerson or Kepa, because I think Tammy won't get a lot of minutes for the rest of the season now. Because
not.
Exactly. Tuchel has just seemed to have really liked Kai Havertz in that false 9/proper 9 role. And then when the opposition suits it more, he'll probably, like for a proper striker, he'll probably go for Giroud over Tammy. Hence why, if there is a situation where Tammy is fit enough to play, I would go for him. What about you? What would you do in terms of the front 3 and then the striker?
I agree on Pulisic and Mason Mount. I think the only thing with Tammy is that we don't know if he's fit, and I wouldn't rush him to start if he's not fit, because then you could aggravate it and you could re-injure him again. So for that reason, I'd probably go with Giroud, because Tammy, I don't know if he's fit. Maybe bring Tammy off the bench. But yeah, I think Tammy would have a good record against these smaller teams, and definitely in the cup as well. So I don't mind if he plays, but I think Giroud as well will do a good job. I think he could potentially link up with Pulisic quite well. I think Pulisic needs that type of player that he can pass the ball into, dribble off, and link up with. And I think Mason Mount would do quite well with him as well. So I think Giroud would just connect potentially Mason Mount and Pulisic a bit better, and bring a little bit more chemistry into it in terms of the way that they link up. And to be honest, if I'm being real with Tammy, I think Tammy, if we're going to get Haaland, which is something that Roman Abramovich seems to be very serious about, then Tammy probably doesn't have a future, because I don't see Tammy staying with Erling Haaland coming through the door. I've spoke about it before in terms of the age profile of having him, Werner, Kai and Haaland in the same squad. It's not going to work. You need an experienced player that's happy to be deputy. There's such a thing as bad competition, and that would be bad competition, because you can't have players that are all 23, 20, 24 who need minutes, by the way, to develop, all fighting for the same spot. If you want good depth, you do need that experienced striker, whether that be Aguero at Man City with Jesus, Azpilicueta with James, Giroud with Erling Haaland, whoever comes in. And I don't think the club are convinced on Tammy, despite his goals. So I think they are going to look for that striker. So the only thing with Tammy is that we may just be not wasting our time here, but it's one of those things where it seems like a formality. So I think I'd play Giroud and bring Tammy off the bench, but I don't mind if Tammy starts, because again, we could need him. We're going to need everybody, so he could be very much needed at the end of the season as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a fair point. I think with Tammy, I've said this all along since these rumors started with Haaland and that Tammy might leave or whatever. I think it's all down to Tammy. If Tammy's okay with being a backup, I think he'll stay. I think it's not too bad to have him around in that role. I think he'll do good in that role. But if his, objective and aim for his career is to be a starting Premier League striker, and it's not so much about being at Chelsea, then he'll leave. Or, well, not even just Premier League. Maybe he'll be involved in some sort of deal with Dortmund. Who the hell knows? Or he'll just go abroad, right? But if he wants to be a starting striker for any team, then he'll realistically have to leave. Some people, and that includes Dami, I think, said, they don't really rate that attitude if the rumours are to be believed. I understand it. It's just being realistic with yourself. He's not going to play ahead of Erling Haaland. If it's his ambition to play games regularly, then I think it's understandable. Yeah, like I said, obviously, if Tammy isn't at 100%, then don't play. I'm saying if he is, then I would. Otherwise, obviously, just go with Olivier Giroud, who hasn't had a lot of game times recently either. And by the way, fair enough. If it's actually your birthday, happy birthday, lazy and out. Big up yourself. Cheers for watching. And I guess now that we've kind of gone through the team, I guess the next thing to probably discuss before we round it out in a couple of minutes is a scoreline. Because obviously, no replay games or whatever kind of waffle. It's just, it has to be decided on the day.
Yeah.
How do you think the game will go? Do you think we'll finally get that kind of slapping of a team that we've been craving? Or do you think it will be a tight one again?
I think we'll do better. I'm going to go with a 3-0. I don't think we're going to do anything like a 4 or 5, but I would go 3-0. One better than we've managed under Tuchel so far. And hopefully keep that clean sheet as well. I know there's a lot of changes in there in my lineup personally, and there probably might be in Tuchel's as well, but just keep the clean sheet. Not only for Kepa, just for the squad, it'd be good to keep it going, especially against Sheffield United. There's no need to be conceding against them, in my opinion. Keep it very, very clean, very, very simple, and don't stress out the fan base.
Exactly. No, that is fair. I mean, I would hope for that too. 3-0. It sounds good. It's one of these ones where I'm not sure how much I believe in our team to get more than 2 at the moment. Like it's kind of like the amount of games under Tuchel we should have scored 4 or more is crazy. Even against bloody Atletico, we should have done realistically late on. Obviously not for the whole game, but the amount of chances we had particularly after Savage's red card, it's crazy.
The team is just very they're very poor when it comes to the final decision in the last phase. There's so many times where we're in a 2v1 or 3v2, or there's a pullback and it's an opportunity for a tap in and there's nobody there. They haven't read the run properly. If this is Man City, Sterling's tapping in all these chances. The decision making is a lot better, and they're scoring tap-ins and they're wiping teams away. I just think this team, when it comes to in that final third, they just need to be a bit more aware, a little bit more ruthless and clinical with their finishing. But they also need to just understand they need to be in the box. That first goal was Ziyech basically a tap-in, because why? We got him behind, then you lay it across and you score. And that move on FIFA that everybody complains about, the tap-in goal that everybody says is scummy. That's what Chelsea need to be doing, That's the goal that they could be getting every game if they were serious. So that's what we need to see.
And even then, Ziyech's tap-in wasn't even great. It kind of needed Oblak to kind of
even he scuffed it, but it is what it is. I'll take it.
Exactly. I always like to do like a little in terms of actually I haven't really agreed with myself on a scoreline. I'll say 3-1. I feel like we'll have a couple too many changes to keep the clean sheet. At the end of the day, it won't matter. It will look nice if we keep another one, but I'm gonna go 3-1. At least we'll score more than the 2. That will be something. Interesting question by some reader here. Do you think Hudson-Odoi needs to be doing better, in particular with chances like he had late on against Atletico Madrid? These are the ones that, because he's most likely out of all of our forwards seemingly to get into those roles when he doesn't play right wing back. He's the guy that shoots from outside the box or just the edge of the box. He's the guy that takes on people to get himself into shooting and scoring positions more than anybody else in our front 3 other than Pulisic, but we haven't really seen a lot of him in that kind of front 3 recently. He does need to be doing better at that, isn't it?
There's not a single attacker in our team that I can tell you that doesn't need to do better. Everybody does, Every single attacker needs to do better. I'm not impressed yet. Apart from Kai Havertz in the last couple of games, I wouldn't even still. That's not form. 2 out of the last 3 games you've played well. Everton and Atletico. Leeds wasn't so good with the finishing. I can't call that form. So none of our forwards are actually in form. So everybody needs to do better. They need to be more ruthless. They need to be better with their decision making, and they need to be more cutthroat and more consistent. And that's the same with Hudson-Odoi. He needs to trust his left foot, as the person there just said, many times, or pull it back across the box. But he just looked he didn't look sharp when he came on. Didn't look clinical or ruthless in the final third. Didn't have the decision making on point. And everybody needs to be better in that regard when they're getting into those positions, because it will cost us. If we're serious about winning trophies, you need to be ruthless in the final third. That is the last box to tick in this team, in terms of actually, being a complete side. You need to be putting those chances away. You can't be having counter attacks where you've got a man spare and you're not putting the ball in the back of the net. That's not serious. And nobody's put up the stats to say that they have been good enough this season in that attack. So yeah, 100% he needs to be better. He had a good game against Everton, then didn't play. I don't believe he played against Leeds from the start, and then it's been a bit inconsistent. So yeah, we just need to be better. Everybody just needs to improve.
It's tough, isn't it? Because you're spot on. You're spot on, and it's kind of like depressing because we've been doing so well, but the forwards just haven't. And we've been speaking about this, on all of our channels, in this community, shall we say. All of us have been talking about this. We need to do better in terms of finishing, in terms of big chance creation. I mean, Tuchel keeps going on about precision and whatever else, and it just isn't there on a consistent basis. I mean, if we keep all the clean sheets and we are good enough to get 1 or 2 goals every game, there is we'll win the Champions League, we'll win the FA Cup, and we'll make top 4. Do you know what I mean? And then, none of us are going to be complaining by the end of the season. But at some point, we won't be able to keep a clean sheet in every game. Maybe one day we'll even concede 2 goals. And if we then can just score 2, 3, or 4, then that will be very helpful. And like you said, it goes for the lot of them. It goes for the lot of them. It goes for Timo Werner. And it's a question that Artin has asked a few times, but now it actually fits the conversation. He asked, could the international break help players such as Timo Werner? Now, I guess maybe it could, because what seemed to ruin Timo Werner is losing 6-0 to Spain. So maybe going back with Germany and not losing 6-0, maybe that could rejuvenate his Chelsea career a little bit. Who knows? But realistically, if you actually look at Timo Werner's stats with Germany, he's kind of like he is with Chelsea, not that great. He kind of was just really great with RB Leipzig, in all honesty. I'm still hoping for him to become great with Chelsea, but so far he's that only real striker that Germany have ever since, Miroslav Klose, ended his career. They don't really have a proper striker. I guess you had Sandro Wagner for a while, and you had Mario Gomez for a couple of years in between, but he's the only real striker, and he still does really get a lot of goals. It's a bit of a shambles.
His conversion rate is quite poor. Even at RB Leipzig, he wasn't very clinical. 100%. He just got a lot of chances, and obviously in that high line, if you get 3 or 4 chances a game, you're going to score eventually. I don't have an issue because he's putting in the work, the mentality is spot on as well. The attitude is there. So I think he will come
when he came on. That was shocking in my opinion.
So he's setting up chances as well. So I think he will come good if he keeps sticking at it with Tuchel. But I think the international break comes at a good time for all those forwards because they need to go back to their home countries. I don't know if Morocco are playing for Ziyech, but Ziyech potentially could do a stat pad there. Kai Havertz and Werner go to Germany and go and get their chemistry back on point as well, and many others. So I think the international break comes at a good time for us, comes at a good time for them, gives everybody a bit of a break as well if you're not going to internationals. Because when you come back for all those forwards, you need to understand that this is not a joke. We've got through really to this part of the season without these strikers being clinical. That's got to stop now. That's really got to stop. Everybody from Pulisic all the way to Timo Werner. We're about to come into the last leg of the season, crunch time, and so much to my surprise, at the start of the season, I wasn't sure if this was going to be the case, but we're actually in contention for two cups and still getting in the top 4, which I couldn't have said the same in early January. So with that being said, all of these forwards need to be on point in the latter stages of the season. Kai Havertz coming out and saying, listen, I'm fully recovered now. I'm ready to get back to my best. Ziyech has said that you haven't seen the real Ziyech yet. Fantastic. Let's see it now. After this international break, I need to see it. There's 10 games left, maybe, potentially in all comps or something around that. In terms of, how many league games is even left? It's really not that many now.
11. I think we've played 27, 26.
Let's take a look. So yeah, we've played 29. So you've got 9 league games left.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then you've got Champions League and FA Cup knockouts. So you're looking at the best part of 5 Champions League games if you win.
3 FA Cup games.
Yeah, 3 FA Cup games and 9 Prem. It's not a long way to go, you know.
Yeah, it's a max
Really
of 17 Chelsea games. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know, I think we ought to see some form now. You know, we ought to see some sort of output now from these forwards, all of them. So that's what I'm waiting for. That's what I want to see.
Exactly. Let's hope that happens. Just quickly, just because he's been pretty much begging it. To quickly touch on this, I'm not even going to read the whole thing out. It's public knowledge that Tammy Abraham grew up in an Arsenal supporting family. He speaks about this all the bloody time. And that's why he keeps on going. He really wants to be Arsenal. And that's why he was so gassed when he scored that winner against Arsenal under Frank Lampard. So I don't think this has got anything to do with a lack of loyalty for Tammy Abraham to Chelsea. I don't think we should be telling or thinking about a lack of loyalty for Tammy.
I think sometimes we need to, just a final point on all of this. I think sometimes we need to not even pretend like clubs have loyalty to players. Everything is business. Everything's about output. It's all about, you know, doing the business on the pitch. If Tammy is, you know, not the world-class striker right now that Chelsea board feel that they need to win the Premier League next season, and that's Erling Haaland, Chelsea board are not going to show any more loyalty to Tammy than Tammy's going to show to them. If a 40 or 45 million pound bid comes for Tammy Abraham, and that helps them fund Haaland, the Chelsea board may just say to him, can you please go? You know, can you please take that deal? Because that would actually benefit us. And we've got Giroud potentially signs another year extension. Kai Havertz can play that role. Timo Werner against a high line. And then Erling Haaland. So they wouldn't need Tammy. So people talk about loyalty to football clubs. Football clubs are not always loyal to players. Fans are not always loyal to players. Tammy's received loads of abuse from Chelsea supporters one day. Next day, he's Didier Drogba. So I have no issue with Tammy moving on if he feels like that's the right thing to do with his career. That careers are very short. You look at Lukaku, he left, went to Everton, did his thing. Man United, now into Milan, about to win a league title potentially. So there's many different routes for a career. Him staying here doesn't mean he's gonna make it. And just because he stays here and is loyal to us, it doesn't mean that he's gonna get the best possible career that he can. You know, he needs to take care of himself first. Same with Tomori. You know, he goes out to AC Milan. If he takes the deal over there when they probably eventually go and bid for him, then fair play to him. We didn't play him. We didn't show him that he was part of the plans. So he goes. That's how it goes. And I keep saying this, not every academy player is going to make it here. And striker and goalkeeper are the two most ruthless positions on the pitch. There's no place for hiding. There's no place for, you know, sympathy or sorrow. You have to put the ball in the back of the net. You have to stop it. And if you don't, you're in the headlines and everybody's going to be looking at you. It's not like midfield or right back where you can get cover. There's no cover for a goalkeeper and there's no cover for a striker one-on-one. Bread and butter, that's it. And I've always said that's the one position I'm not really that patient on, if I'm being honest. That's the position where Chelsea always need a world-class forward if they are going to win trophies. I don't mind Tammy staying as a backup option, but if he doesn't want to stay as a backup option and he wants to play games and develop, you can't blame him. Can't throw the loyalty card about. So all the best to him. It depends on him what he wants to do.
100%. And even if he does choose to go, that doesn't mean he doesn't love Chelsea or isn't loyal to Chelsea. You know, you can be loyal to a club and still go. I mean, Frank Lampard played for Man City. That doesn't mean he didn't love Chelsea. I mean, maybe for very few players ever, it's going to be like John Terry, who purposely refused to play in the Premier League because he would not want to play against Chelsea. But John Terry is different. Like, you can't expect everybody to be John Terry. It's not how the world goes, and especially, you know, the modern era is even more different, you know, than that whole idea in the first place. Like I've said this many times, I think just because we can get more money for Timo Werner and he's pissed me off more, I would probably be more happy to get rid of Werner than I would of Tammy. But again, like you said, if Tammy doesn't want to be backup, he needs to be shipped out, and we can make good money off Tammy. 35, 40 million, whatever is in there.
I think he minimum commands 40. If I see Solanke and Brewster going for 20, I want to see 40 for Tammy minimum.
So you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Obviously, the global situation, you know, reduces everyone's financial capabilities a little bit. So that's what.
But then maybe it has to be a loan with an obligation to buy. I don't think Marina's going to sell a young English striker who's put up the stats he's put on the cheap, regardless of the pandemic. So either they're going to have to cough up the cash, or it's going to have to be a loan with an option to buy or something like that. But people talk about a lot, finally, on Timo Werner and how it's unfair how Tammy's treated and Werner's treated. I completely agree. I think Timo Werner gets a lot of support, and rightly so, but then Tammy doesn't get that same support. And both of them arguably have put up, you know, in terms of conversion rates, then they're both not great. They're both similar. I think Giroud has the best conversion rate. Tammy has things he can improve on with his heading ability. Timo Werner
I think
has
Tammy actually has the best conversion rate. Maybe it's changed because I
think minutes to goals, it might be Giroud, but it's forever changing. Point is, it's not good enough from all three of them. But Timo Werner has also got things he needs to improve on. His first touch, his heading ability also wouldn't be that great either. But I think you have to be realistic. When the club signed Timo Werner just last summer, and they put the money into it, they're not going to sell him this summer. So that's why it's going to end up being Tammy that gets the short end of the straw. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is the way it goes. And, let's see what happens in terms of the transfer window in the summer anyway. You said put money into some players. Does the same go for Hakim Ziyech? Ziyech is a weird one. I'll ask you that as my last question. Obviously, he scored the decisive goal and had an overall pretty good game against Atletico Madrid. But other than in all of the last few games that he started, whether it was Liverpool, whether it was Man United, particular against Manchester United, he was pretty poor. So I'm like, how does he keep starting at the moment? Do you find that weird too? Like, obviously, I see it in terms of game plan. You play Werner up top, you like to play the balls up top. But Ziyech hasn't actually found Werner with any decisive balls up top. So as much as that's a lovely idea to have, it's not actually worked on the pitch yet.
Even before his goal against Atletico Madrid, he wasn't brilliant. I think most people can agree on that if you're being fair. I think with Ziyech, again, he's a player that his age dictates that he should have been an impact signing that delivers immediately. Of course, he's had injuries as well to deal with, change of management, which is not easy. And I always give players a second season to show what they can do. So even with Ziyech, I would say be patient with him, even though he hasn't been good this season. I know he's 27, going to be 28, but give him minimum next season.
28 yesterday, didn't he? Or 2 days ago?
I'm not sure. Yeah, sorry, he would have turned 28, so he's 28 now. Birthday was yesterday. So give him next season to show what he can do. A proper preseason, a proper break. He's going to have AFCON next season as well. But let's see if he can be consistent and deliver after this season. Because I always say, if you bring in a new player, expect them to be inconsistent in their first season, especially if they're coming from a new league. Everybody thought he was going to be an impact player, but he's come from Ajax, a team that play a very particular style of football, a team that was built around him, where he had the most touches, the most influence, and there is a cook in the kitchen at Chelsea in that attack. Everybody's on the even playing field. You don't get funneled the ball as often as you might want to be. You might want to be the epicenter of every attack. You're not going to be. Same with Kai Havertz. He was the epicenter of the Bayer Leverkusen attack, and he's not now. He's not the epicenter. He is part of he's part of an attack. And it's the same goes for all of them. So with Ziyech, I give him the next season. I've been very disappointed, but there's factors in there as well as to why I think he didn't play a game before the season started until March 2020. I think he'd been off all of that time until the start of the season. So he might have not even been, fully fit. Everybody goes on about that run of form, but really it was against Krasnodar, Sheffield United and Burnley. So, it's not the opposition to really be taking conclusions from to say that he's 100% going to work out. I wouldn't, people keep referencing them 3 games. That's not the 3 games I'm looking at to say this player is definitely going to be able to adapt to the Premier League. But let's see what he can do. Like I said, he played well in the second half against Atletico. I think the Champions League's probably made for him as well. He's got the experience there. So I think that's what Tuchel's banking on for him to deliver there. And let's just see if he can get his confidence up. He has ability. It's just the fact that he is going to frustrate you at times. He is going to try those risky balls. And if they don't come off and if he's having a bad day, then he looks a lot worse than he is. That's just the way it goes. So we'll see what he can do.
100%. And I keep going back to this. Like, a lot of it will depend on what Tuchel's plans are for the squad and the team for next season. Like, again, we are very unlikely to sell players that we just signed last summer. Unless Tuchel is like, I'm not going to use these guys at all. So they will just lose value next season. That's the only situation where I see the club selling any of them this coming summer. But again, who the hell knows? Tuchel clearly likes a big squad. I mean, Frank Lampard kept going on about the squad being too big, and Tuchel sits there and says the squad is perfect. And obviously now we had for this one game 5 players out, and you're like, well, we didn't have a single centre-back on the bench. And when Zuma was obviously down with that, head collision, you're like, well, flip's sake, what do we do now? If you obviously had to come off. So, big squad is only ever so big as long as you have no injuries. To be honest, we've been very fortunate with that at times. I think I saw a stat that we've actually had the least amount of days of injuries of every Premier League club this season. Maybe that's changed recently because obviously Thiago kept being out and whatever else. But at the time, a couple of weeks ago, that when that came out, that was the case. So we've been certainly fortunate, as much as Ziyech has missed some, part of the season. Pulisic has missed pretty much the entire first half of the season. We were still somewhat fortunate with it. And, remember back then, we had the same squad. Back in November times, October times, we were like, we need another winger because we don't have enough wingers. And now everyone's saying we need to sell everybody. So, hey, it swings and roundabouts. Let's see what happens in the summer. It will be down to the board. It will be down to Tuchel. It will be down to, hey, who's available and who even wants our players, if anybody. So, with all of that said, I think we're going to round it up here. Appreciate every single one of you that has tuned in. Appreciate you coming on, Matisse, a lot. Like I said before already, his link, his channel is literally in the title or in the description below. Just click the MAH. Subscribe to his channel, brilliant content, so definitely go check that out. Smash the like button if you haven't already, that'd be sick. I think we have still over 230 people watching and not quite hit 150 likes. So go down below, smash the like button, let's get 150 likes. Subscribe if you haven't already. We probably hit 9K by now, but if we haven't, just go down below and subscribe. We're on the road to 10K, so 9K don't stop us. Just be sure to subscribe. Let's get there as soon as bloody possible. Become a member if you fancy that. There's a join button underneath if you're on desktop. There's a link in the description if you're on your phone, or the information that you need or might want. It's all there if you click that link or click that button. But yeah, we're going to leave it here. Let's hope Chelsea can get the dub tomorrow. Our talk in the end kind of turned a little bit more negative than both Matisse and myself are actually. It's just, when you get to the forwards, we have a couple of, things that haven't been perfect. But at the end of the day, there is still a chance that Chelsea could repeat the 2012 season in terms of getting a bloody double of the FA Cup and the UEFA Champions League. And to keep that dream alive, we have to get the dub tomorrow. So let's hope we can do that against Sheffield United tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea. Cheers to you, Matisse. And I'll see you guys if I can find the bloody image next time.